The Mueller investigation is complete, and this is a simple fact that will never go away. Not one single American was ever charged, indicted, or convicted for conspiring with Russia to influence the 2016 election. Not even a low-level volunteer. The number is 0.
And it's Rachel Maddow from one episode. This is one episode of her show.
Russia hates Russia, Putin, Russia, Moscow.
So guess what? There's a book out right now called Shattered. And it's about the Hillary Clinton campaign, and it's by 2 insiders. And here's where the Russia stuff comes from. So this is from that book. It says, the strategy had been set within 24 hours of her concession speech. Robbie Mook and John Podesta assembled her communications team at the Brooklyn headquarters to engineer the case that the election was entirely on the up and up.
No way.
For a couple of hours, with Shake Shack containers littering the room, they went over the script they would pitch to the press and the public. Already, Russian hacking was the centerpiece of the argument. Wow. So that's John Podesta, who would rather start World War III than admit he ran a campaign. and they got Shake Shacks.
You know what is so beautiful about Hillary Clinton going down in flames is that we didn't even have to release information that wasn't true.
Wow. God bless Daddy Washington Schultz.
So get this, I was looking through WikiLeaks, and I found this thing from a guy named Peter Brodnitz. So he was a consultant, Top Line Results or whatever. So they did a poll, and he did research for the Hillary Clinton campaign. This is back in 2015. And so he submitted all this data. So they did all this research on people, and they did data. And you see that red line? It's going down to this little thing here. And what does that say? I'll tell you what, this is an internal document from the Hillary Clinton campaign. And wait till you hear what that says. That little section there says, Secretary Clinton's top vulnerability tested in this poll is the attack that claims as Secretary of State, she signed off on a deal that gave the Russian government control of 20% of America's uranium production after investors in the deal donated over $140 million to the Clinton Foundation.
A New York Times article from April of 2015 has the headline, Cash Flow to the Clinton Foundation amid Russian uranium deal.
Her own internal document said that's her number one frickin' vulnerability, and it said half of all likely voters are less likely to support Clinton after hearing that statement, and 17% are much less likely to support her after that statement. After voters heard a battery of negatives on Secretary Clinton, their top concern was that she does not seem honest. That's where that Russia comes from. Because it was her vulnerability. And what do all frickin' crazy right-wingers do? They hurl the accusation on you before you can accuse them of it. And that's exactly where it came from. That's where this Russia's from, because they did a deal for plutonium, and the Kremlin Associated Bank gave Bill Clinton $500,000. They gave the Clinton Foundation over $140. This is unbelievable, and no one talks about this. You turn on MSNBC, CNN, they will never tell you about this.
Welcome to this web exclusive on the soft coup being perpetrated by the deep state right now. And I know that if you don't read up on this stuff, that sentence I just said sounds full tinfoil. Totally nuts. But give me a few minutes to explain and you won't think I'm crazy, or only moderately. Point number one, I hate Donald Trump. You will not probably ever hear me say a kind word about Donald Trump. Point number two, I don't know much about Russia. I'm an American in America doing a comedy TV show on American issues for Americans. Maybe it's sad to admit my ignorance, but I know very little about Russia. I know about as much as most Americans, which is next to nothing. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, eating grits and fried chicken. I'm named after Robert E. Lee. And my high school mascot was the Confederate Rebels. But with those two things in mind, with those two things established, I hope you'll believe me and believe former presidential candidate Dennis Kucinich, and believe Pulitzer Prize winner Chris Hedges, and believe Pulitzer Prize winner Glenn Greenwald, and many others, that we are witnessing an attempted coup by the deep state right now. What is deep state? Well, Glenn Greenwald of The Intercept put it this way.
The deep state, although there's no precise or scientific definition, generally refers to the agencies in Washington that are permanent power factions. They stay and exercise power even as presidents who are elected come and go. They typically exercise their power in secret, in the dark, and so they're barely subject to democratic accountability if they're subject to it at all.
So what I wanted to see is if you could give me a yes or no answer to the question, does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not.
Not wittingly. There are cases where they could inadvertently, perhaps, collect, but not wittingly.
Agencies like the CIA, the NSA, and the other intelligence agencies.
So that's deep state. They're basically not accountable to our democracy at all. It is very beneficial for these agencies to restart a Cold War with Russia. They want that. There's a lot of money in that. But don't believe me. Seriously, don't trust me. Believe former Congressman and former presidential candidate Dennis Kucinich.
What's at the core of this is an effort by some in the intelligence community to upend any positive relationship between the U.S. and Russia. And I tell you, there's a marching band and chowder society out there. There's gold in them there hills. There are people trying to separate the U.S. and Russia so that this military-industrial intel axis can cash in.
There's gold in them there hills. Now that's Dennis Kucinich on Fox Business Channel. But even though Fox somewhat likes Donald Trump, I mean, they like him more than other mainstream media networks, they still aren't comfortable talking about deep state. It doesn't fit into their talking points, which are Republicans good, Democrats bad, like it has to be right there, Republicans good, Democrats bad, or did not process. So watch the host's response. Watch the response to Dennis Kucinich. He's saying we're witnessing at least a policy coup, if not a actual coup by the deep state.
Axis can cash in.
So is the bigger issue here, in your view, the fact that this was leaked and somebody inside the White House got this news out to the press? What are you saying?
That's not what he said at all. Was your brain working just now? Kucinich did not give up.
But the American people have to know that there's a game going on inside the intelligence community where there are those who want to separate the U.S. from Russia in a way that would reignite the Cold War. That's what's at the bottom of all this. It's like, it's early in the morning, it's Valentine's Day, but wake up, America.
Dennis Kucinich is calling for the impeachment of President Bush. The former presidential candidate and Ohio congressman accuses the president of misleading the American public into the Iraq War.
George W. Bush, in violation of his constitutional oath to faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and to the best of his ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and in violation of its constitutional duty under Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, has both personally and acting through his agents and subordinates, together with the Vice President, illegally spent public dollars on a secret propaganda campaign to manufacture a false cause for war against Iraq.
Yeah, this type of thing should horrify anyone who wants to continue to have a democracy in this country.